This past weekend, during the Battleoftalingchan Championship, an on-stream incident occurred that immediately divided the community. During a critical game, a player accidentally used two normal magic cards in the same turn, which is explicitly against the rules. The game state advanced, and neither player recognized the mistake at the time. While the judge did briefly intervene to check the graveyard, due to prior shuffling, no conclusive evidence could be found that magic was played during that turn. After the match concluded, the player who benefited from the misplay went on to win the championship. And after the event, through stream reviews and community analysis, the misplay became very clear. Since then, the blame has been directed everywhere, at the players, the judge, the organization, and the game itself. The central question became unavoidable. Should this championship result stand, or should it be overturned or even replayed? To answer that properly, emotion has to be removed. This requires looking at precedents, responsibility, and how competitive TCGs actually handle these type of events. So let's get into it. Before we start, let's go ahead and watch and see what transpired in order to understand what actually happened. So the game state is that 1GG's life was just hit, where he was able to find normal magic out of the graveyard. He finds Open the Window. He uses Open the Window to bounce that card back to his opponent's hand, at which point he is then going to play an avatar, which allows him to mill 3 and find a land card out of his graveyard. So he mills the 3, he goes and finds a land, at which point he is then interrupted with an accident. So he goes ahead and finishes finding the land. He then puts that land into play, and he plays Think Twice on top of the accident to cancel that to be able to keep the avatar. Now he's going to use the ability of the land to be able to shuffle 6 cards back into his deck using that ability. So that's what we're seeing right now. And if you look at the overall game state of what's going on, 1GG is not out of it, but he's definitely behind, because he's only got 1 avatar. His opponent has 2. He only has 2 life left, but his opponent only has 1 life left. So he's not completely out of it, but it's definitely not looking as great, especially when you have an avatar that's allowed to search by discarding. So we're going to see he draws, and off of the draw, he then plays the magic. So right here, we see the second magic played. This is where the incident transpired and happened, where we should proceed from here and what our expectations should be. So in order to do that, we have to look at the precedences that have been established by other TCGs, because they have a much longer history, as well as they have a lot more consistency when it comes to competitive scene than Battleoftalingchan, which is a relatively newer TCG. So this is not a new type of event or scenario that has never happened before. We've seen this in other TCGs, from Magic to Flesh and Blood, the Pokemon, where misplays do happen, and sometimes those misplays happen on stream. When they do happen, they're handled appropriately, and majority of the time there's a investigation, and based off of those findings they then make a decision. And in this case, we have to look at the facts, which it is the player's responsibility to maintain a legal game state, and that the judge enforces the rules when issues arise. When unnoticed misplays happen, it is ultimately the player's responsibility to maintain that legal game state. And we could look at that from Magic to Flesh and Blood to Pokemon, that if it's unintentional, most of the time the results stand. Next thing I want to discuss is the role of the judges. So I think there's some confusion with this, and I think it's important to clear it up. The judge is not like a referee that you would think of in a traditional sport, but the judge's role is to respond to judge calls, resolve disputes, and interpret and enforce the rules when issues arise. It's not the judge's responsibility to track every single action at the table and police the game state that would override the player's responsibility. Yes, the judge is there. If he sees a misplay, he's there to call it out. But we're all people and we miss things like that. And so at the end of the day, the judge's responsibility is to intervene when called upon from a judge call, but also to interpret and enforce the rules and resolve disputes. But from my understanding is that there has been a discussion with that particular judge and the issue's already been resolved. So moving forward, as far as getting deeper into the player responsibilities. So it is important to address that in competitive play, you as the player are responsible for your actions, your opponent's actions, and calling upon a judge when needed. In this particular situation, neither player realized that there was an illegal play. Even the commentators at the time did not catch it. And myself, I was watching it live. I didn't catch it. And the judge was not alerted to the infraction. From my understanding, they did an investigation and they already found that there was no malice intent. So it was an honest mistake. It was just an honest misplay. But I think the bottom line of it is they did an investigation. They gave both players a warning because they allowed the second normal magic to resolve, which I think was the right decision. And ultimately, the championship stands. This is really critical. They did a very good job, and I think that this was handled extremely well and correctly. So this leads me to talk about how we can do better as a community, but also how Battleoftalingchan can improve from this experience. When it comes to gameplay, we have to take better ownership of and accountability for the sequencing of events that transpire during the course of the game. The other thing to remember is that there is a lot of new players that don't fully understand the rules because there's a certain level of confusion when it comes to this particular TCG. The rules are not readily available and there's not a lot of clarity when it comes to the rules themselves. So one of my kind of constructive feedback would be making the rules more readily available. Next is I would really focus in on making a more robust judge program because the competitive scene is growing. And as the competitive scene becomes more competitive and more players get involved, there needs to be more judges. So my final thoughts is this. This was a misplay and they happen. I understand that this type of event does not feel great and we never want something like this to happen, especially on a championship level. I'm sure this will not be the first or the last. Misplays are going to happen, mistakes are going to be made, but it's ultimately how the company handles it. I think they handled it extremely well. And then lastly, I think maintaining that professional level that we know that where Battleoftalingchan tends to put the player first. And that's the reason why I really enjoy this game. And I think it's one of the better TCGs is because they seem to always err on the side of the players. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. And let me know down below what you guys think about this situation and ultimately what your thoughts and feelings are towards it. Thank you.